The storm did not arrive quietly. It screamed. Waves taller than buildings slammed into the rocks. Wind howled like it was alive. And the sky split open with lightning so bright it turned night into a burning white second. Everyone sensible had already run for shelter. Everyone, except him. As he stood on the edge of the pier, rain cutting into his face like needles, he heard something that froze his blood more than the cold ever could. A scream. Not the wind. Not metal groaning. A human scream. A woman's voice, raw with terror, followed by a child crying. Out there, somewhere in that black, raging water. He didn't think. He didn't pray. He didn't hesitate. He took one step forward, and the storm swallowed him. His name was Adam Hale, and up until that night the world barely knew he existed. 32 years old, a dock maintenance worker in a coastal town that tourists loved, but rarely noticed the people who kept it alive. Adam fixed broken boards, tied loose ropes, and cleaned after storms that other people watched safely from hotel windows. He lived in a small rented room above a bait shop, sent part of his paycheck to his aging father, and kept his dreams quiet because life had taught him not to expect much. He had lost his mother years ago, lost his brother to the sea, and since then, the ocean had been both his enemy and the only thing that made sense to him. That night, it was trying to kill someone else, and Adam refused to let it. The scream came again, thinner this time. Adam's eyes locked onto the chaos beyond the pier. Through sheets of rain and exploding foam, he spotted it. A small speedboat, completely out of control, smashed again and again by the waves. Its engine was dead. The anchor hadn't held, and each wave dragged it closer to the jagged rocks that had already torn apart ships far larger than that fragile thing. Inside the boat, he saw her. A woman clinging to the side, one arm wrapped desperately around a child no older than 5. The child's face was pale, eyes wide, mouth open in a cry the storm kept stealing away. Every instinct in Adam screamed that this was impossible. No rescue crew would go out in this weather. No lifeline would reach that far. If he went in, there was a real chance he would never come back. People were shouting behind him. Someone grabbed his arm. "You're insane. You'll die out there." Adam didn't turn around. His eyes never left the boat. He thought of his brother's face the last morning he saw him alive. He thought of how it felt to wait for news that never came. He shook the hand off his arm and stripped off his jacket. He tied a rope around his waist with hands that didn't tremble. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because fear had already made its decision for him. If someone had to risk everything tonight, it would be him. The moment he hit the water, the cold punched the air out of his lungs. It was like diving into knives. The waves slammed him under, dragged him sideways, spun him until he didn't know which way was up. He fought not with strength, but with stubbornness. Stroke by stroke, breath by burning breath, he forced himself forward. The rope went taut behind him, then slack, then taut again as the people on the pier struggled just to keep hold. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, Adam saw how small he was. One man against an ocean in a rage. And still he kept going. The boat was closer now. He heard the woman screaming his direction, though she had no idea who he was or if he could even reach them. A wave lifted him high, then threw him forward like a broken toy. His shoulder smashed into the hull. Pain exploded through his arm, but relief followed instantly. He grabbed the side, fingers slipping on rain and salt. "I've got you," he shouted, though his voice came out hoarse and half-drowned. The woman looked at him like she was seeing a ghost. Her face was streaked with tears and rain, her hair plastered to her skin. She shook her head violently. "Take my son first," she screamed. "Please." Adam didn't argue. He hauled himself up enough to reach the child. The boy clung to his mother with terrifying strength, sobbing into her shoulder. Adam met his eyes and forced a smile that felt impossible on his frozen face. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, even as the boat lurched again. "I've got you. I promise." The child hesitated just long enough for another wave to crash into them, and that moment decided everything. Adam wrapped the boy against his chest and kicked away from the boat just as it slammed into a rock with a sound like splitting bone. The swim back was worse. Much worse. The extra weight, the weakening rope, the storm growing angrier by the second. Adam's arms screamed. His lungs burned. The child clung to him, face buried against his neck, small body shaking. At one point, a wave dragged them under so long that Adam felt darkness creeping at the edges of his vision. He thought very calmly that this was how it ended. And then hands grabbed him. Strong hands. Many hands. They pulled him up, dragged them both onto the pier as the rope finally snapped behind him. Adam collapsed, coughing up seawater, barely aware of the chaos around him. Someone took the child from his arms. He heard crying. He heard shouting. He heard someone yelling for blankets. Through blurred vision, he saw the woman pulled from the water moments later by another rope, barely conscious but alive. Relief washed over him heavier than the waves ever had. He tried to stand. His legs failed. The world tilted, spun, and went dark. When Adam woke up, it was to silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy stillness that comes after disaster. His body ached everywhere. Bandages wrapped his shoulder and ribs. A dim light glowed beside the bed. He realized he was in a small clinic, the kind towns had when hospitals were far away. A nurse noticed his eyes open and gasped softly. "You're awake," she said, like she hadn't fully believed he would be. "You're very lucky." Lucky. The word felt strange. Adam turned his head slowly. "The woman," he croaked. "The child." The nurse smiled, and just like that, something tight in his chest loosened. "They're alive. Both of them. Thanks to you." She hesitated, then added, "She's been asking about you." Adam closed his eyes. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt empty, exhausted, and painfully aware of how close he had come to never waking up at all. "I just did what anyone would," he whispered. The nurse didn't argue. She had seen enough in her life to know that wasn't true. The morning light crept in slowly, pale and gentle, as if apologizing for what the night had done. Adam drifted in and out of sleep, unaware that while he lay there, a story was already spreading. Fishermen talking in low voices, dock workers shaking their heads in disbelief, a storm rescue, a man who dove in when everyone else froze. And somewhere beyond the clinic walls, a woman sat beside her sleeping child, gripping a phone with shaking hands, making a call that would change Adam's life forever. If this story already has your heart racing, stay with me, because what waited for Adam the next morning wasn't just gratitude. It was a truth so unexpected, so powerful, that it would test who he was and what he believed he deserved. And before the story continues, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that courage still exists, kindness still matters, and one decision can change everything. Don't miss what happens next. Adam stood at the edge of the pier long after Eleanor and her son returned to the yacht, watching the water move calmly now, as if it had never tried to kill anyone. The offer she had made echoed in his head, not because of the money, not because of the opportunities, but because of the choice it forced him to face. Eleanor had offered to change his life completely. Education funds, a position in her maritime foundation, a home far from leaking ceilings and nights spent worrying about bills. All of it given freely without conditions. Yet Adam felt something tighten in his chest. He had spent his whole life surviving, not choosing. And now, suddenly, he had to decide who he wanted to be when survival was no longer the only option. He returned home that night and slept poorly, haunted not by the storm, but by the idea that maybe courage was not just about diving into the water, but about stepping into a future you never believed you deserved. The next morning, Adam walked back to the pier before sunrise, expecting the yacht to be gone. Instead, it was still there, quiet, waiting. Eleanor stood alone this time, watching the horizon. She didn't speak at first. She simply handed him a folded piece of paper. Inside was a single sentence written in careful handwriting. "The world needs people who run toward danger, not away from it." Adam looked up at her, confused. "This isn't a contract," she said gently. "It's an invitation." She told him she didn't want to reward him like a headline hero. She wanted to work with him to build rescue programs, storm response teams, systems that would save lives long before desperation took over. "I don't need another executive," she said. "I need someone who understands the sea and understands people." Adam felt his throat tighten. For the first time, the offer didn't feel like charity. It felt like purpose. Weeks later, Adam stood on that same dock, but everything was different. New safety equipment lined the pier. Training teams practiced drills. Fishermen and workers stood straighter, prouder. Adam still wore work boots, still smelled like salt and oil, but now he carried responsibility, not just tools. Eleanor watched from a distance as Adam helped a young volunteer adjust a life vest, his voice calm and steady. Her son stood beside her, smiling, holding that same toy boat. "That's him," the boy said proudly. "That's the man who wasn't scared." Eleanor corrected him softly. "No," she said. "That's the man who was scared and went anyway." Adam never called himself a hero. He still fixed docks, still respected the ocean, still remembered the night he nearly didn't make it back. But he also learned something deeper than fear. One moment of courage can ripple outward in ways you never see. One decision can rewrite not just your life, but the lives of people you will never meet. And sometimes, the greatest reward isn't a yacht waiting at the pier or a powerful name spoken with gratitude. Sometimes it's knowing that when the storm came, you became the kind of person the world desperately needs. If the story moved you, if it reminded you that bravery and kindness still exist, subscribe to the channel. More powerful, emotional stories are waiting here. Stories that prove ordinary people can do extraordinary things when it matters most. Don't miss the next one.